Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week is the last episode of 2019. And it's so crazy to think how quickly this year has gone by, because as they say, that oh-so-cliched phrase, which I mentioned when I discussed storytelling cliches earlier this year, and it's so true that time flies. I'm reflecting on not only this past year, but this past decade and how so much has changed in the last 10 years with things like technology and social media and politics and television and movies and music. And now here we are heading into 2020. So of course, this is also a time to think about New Year's resolutions. And every year I actually write a blog post about my New Year's resolutions. So as I'm recording this, I haven't written it yet, but I will be very soon, and then I post it on New Year's Eve. But overall, just in broad terms, my New Year's resolution is to be more positive and get rid of negativity. And anyone can agree that it's extremely difficult to break unhealthy habits. So, say if someone wants to be healthier by exercising more and eating healthier, it's a matter of making those goals reasonable for yourself. So for me, it's a matter of not harping on the negative and recognizing it, but then turning it into a positive by focusing on the positive aspects of any situation. So I know by just thinking more positively and being more optimistic that it will only lead to great things. Because with New Year's resolutions, I think they say the average or something is that after 3 weeks or so, that tends to be the norm for when people break their New Year's resolutions and just abandon their New Year's resolutions. So again, it's a matter of holding yourself accountable and not being hard on yourself if you slip up with your New Year's resolution, but just knowing that you're working towards improving yourself, and that's what counts. And that leads to growth and happiness overall, because it's self-improvement, just cutting unhealthy habits and doing something positive and improving your life overall. So only great things for 2020. Just going in with that mindset. That's all that matters. And also just thinking about this past year, 2019, that this was the first full calendar year of me doing this podcast. And I'm very proud that I haven't missed a week in doing this podcast. I've produced one episode every single week since I started this podcast in September 2018. And it can be difficult because a lot goes into it with preparing, recording, and editing. But I love doing this podcast, and I'm so excited for 2020 and some great new topics ahead and more guests. It's going to be great. And with all of that being said, to close out this year, I figured I would share a brand new short story I wrote. This is titled Guardian of the Night. So here we go. Without further ado, it's story time. At night, with the sky cloaked in darkness, she gathers up all of the stars. Some are small, a mere glint in the nighttime abyss, while others are big and dazzling, twirling about so they twinkle and catch people's eyes. Sometimes she loses track of how many there are. They seem to grow and multiply every night, and occasionally one of them will escape her long, effervescent limbs before she can disperse them through the sky. To the human eye, it isn't a mischievous child eagerly fleeing the group to slide down an invisible slope, giggling happily at other stars along the way while collecting dust and rocks and waving at clouds in a burst of joy. Instead, it appears as a shooting star, a beautiful, thrilling sight to behold that happens so rarely. On such a night, the sky dark and smooth as velvet, the guardian gathers the stars and whispers her good intentions, to bring people the peace and hope they so crave when they look up at the night sky in search of the first bright star they see to make a wish. The stars scatter from her embrace, sparkling through the sky like glitter against a canvas. They twinkle and glow, and a warm smile spreads across her ethereal face as she watches the stars shining against the sky. Every single night, people will pause in their nightly routine to gaze up at the sky. Looking up at it now from down below is a young mother, Sally, her expression matching that of the guardian, who can hear Sally's wish even though she doesn't say it out loud. She sits in the grass, her small son in her lap, his eyes closed with his head pressed against her chest. Her head drops and her smile slips with heaviness at the sight of her sleeping son. She presses a kiss to the crown of his head and looks back up at the stars, shutting her own eyes now. The guardian hears her wish then, a wish that her son will grow up strong and successful and happy even though it's just the two of them. As Sally opens her eyes, the guardian exhales gently. A cool breeze brushes her cheeks and her smile returns, a sign her silent wish has been acknowledged. She picks up her son and heads home, but not before a kind gentleman stops her and hands her the scarf she's forgotten. She accepts it with gratitude and they talk into the night, a spark of something new and promising. Elsewhere, a small girl, Hannah, looks out her bedroom window, her heart stinging. She presses her little hands together and makes a wish on a star, and the guardian's long locks curve in the direction of the young girl's voice, a whisper for the safe return of their family's lost dog. The stars cluster and wink in a frenzy. The sky seems to glow brighter in a quick flash, and in the distance a dog barks, and Hannah's heart leaps. Soon their neighbor is ringing their doorbell, their dog in his arms. Hannah rushes downstairs, and their dog runs up to her, barking excitedly and sloppily, licking away the tears of happiness that spill down her cheeks, glistening like the stars themselves. In another corner of the world, an elderly man's bones ache as he tiredly drags his feet to his empty bedroom. The man, Walter, rubs his sore joints and hears his bones crack. He shuffles past the window, only to pause, the stars catching his eyes. His lips tick upward, and the guardian hears his gentle plea. She gathers more of the stars and blows them towards him, and he feels the warmth, as though the stars are caressing him, letting him know he's not alone. With the guardian watching over them and everyone, they're never alone. Alright, that was Guardian of the Night. And obviously it's very short, but I'm realizing that as I was reading that, it kind of feels like the prologue to maybe a much longer story. So I'm going to have to think about that, maybe develop that world more, because there's a lot to explore there. And thank you so much for listening to Storytelling Saga this past year. And here's to an amazing, wonderful 2020. And with that, that is going to conclude this week and this year's episode, this final episode of Storytelling Saga for 2019. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Storytelling Saga, as well as on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving me a message in the contact section of storytellingsaga.com or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, I'm so excited to welcome Casey back to the podcast, and this time around, I hate listening to people's dreams. It's like flipping through a stack of old photographs. If I'm not in any of them and nobody's having sex, I just don't care. We will be discussing It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.